Chapter 3 is all about cost volume profit analysis. Cost volume profit analysis basically says, helps you determine what happens to your selling price or what happens to your profit if I change the selling price or costs, etc. So also known as break-even analysis, because a lot of break-even analysis comes from this. A lot of this is pretty simple. However, sometimes you just don't know how to start a problem, and if you can do a few things, write it down. I'll show you what to write down on a separate piece of paper as we go along. So why don't you print this out from Moodle and actually work through it with me as I go along, okay? And I have the solutions to it, but again, as I said before, watching me do it really makes me better, not you, so please practice it yourself. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is, what is your profit if you sell 50 shirts? Show your work. I don't believe I have that on the solution here. Okay, so let's do it right here. So I know that if I sell 50 shirts, you know, this isn't the greatest on this, but hold on. So if I sell 50 shirts for $15, I'm going to do 15 times 50. Okay, and then I'm going to subtract my costs, and I bought each of the t-shirts for 10, so I'm going to subtract 10 times 50. And again, some of you will look at it and say, why can't I just take a shortcut as if I'm making $5 on each shirt? That's going to become important later. But anyway, so I'm going to set this up of $15 times 50 shirts, and they cost me $10 each, so $10 times 50 shirts. And I pay rent, but I'm paying it once, and I pay it $100. Okay? And so that equals my profit. So if I have 750 is my 15 times 50 minus 500 minus 100. Okay? Okay, so that gives me $150. So again, 15 times 50 is the 750. 10 times 50 is the 500. Subtract my $100 of rent, I get $100. And again, some of you may have done it, and hopefully you tried this before you listened to me. If not, hopefully you're getting it very easily, and this is a waste of your time. But anyway, so I could have done 5 times 50 is 250 minus 100, simply because I know I make $5 on each of them. Okay, so I'm going to clear that. Now I'm going to go to the second one. What is our break even in units? Okay, so straight down here. Okay, let's go back to the same thing. My selling price, which is 15 times the number of shirts, minus 10 times the number of shirts, and X is the number of shirts, minus 100 equals 0. So at break even, net income is 0. So I have 5x equals 100, and I solve for x, so x equals 20. Okay? I also want you to know a shortcut way is this formula right here, and this is pretty important. Selling price minus variable costs, right here. Selling price minus variable cost is called contribution margin. It's called contribution margin because $5 of the selling price contributes towards covering fixed costs and contributes towards profit eventually. Okay, so I can take my $100 divided by $5 per t-shirt, and I have to sell 20 of them to break even. Okay, so you can do it the long way, and again, this is one, take your piece of paper and write that one down, because almost everything stems from this. And you can solve for X, you can solve for net income, you can solve for selling price, etc., etc. This is another one, so break even equals fixed cost divided by contribution margin. But I want you to write this, contribution margin per unit, in back of it, because my contribution margin is $5 per unit. And that'll become important in just a second. Okay? What is break even in revenues? Well, break even in revenues is simply 20 times 15. So here's my check figure. 20 times 15 equals the 300. But A better way to get break even in revenues is take fixed cost divided by contribution margin percent. So I usually like to write it like this. My selling price is 15, my variable cost is 10, so my contribution margin in units is 5. And you could do this little box before every single problem. And so I could do it up here, and then I'd have my fixed cost divided by $5 contribution margin, because this is contribution margin in units. Okay? And then I'm going to get everything as a percent of sales dollars. So if my selling price is 100%, 10 divided by 15 is 67%. So my variable cost ratio is 67%. So in other words, for every dollar of sales, or for every $100 of sales, 67 cents or $67 is variable cost, and that means 33% is contribution margin. Contribution margin percent is probably used more than units, because if I have a store or something, I generally sell more than one item. So my contribution margin from this one is 15 minus 10, so it's 5, but what if I sold socks and pants and hats and different things? I might have a different contribution margin on all of them. But if I had my total sales for the entire store, just pretend this is 15,000, and my variable costs are 10,000, or my purchase price of all my materials is 10,000, then I could say, okay, on average, what percent of every sales dollar is contribution margin? So one nice thing about percents is percents are 100 and dollars are 100. So if you ever have trouble with percentages, just think of them as a dollar. So for every dollar sales, 100 cents, 67 cents goes to cover variable cost, and 33 cents is contribution margin. Okay, so I can put this into 100% times X, okay, minus 67% times X minus fixed cost equals 100. That gives me 33 right there, equals 100. So 100 divided by 0.33 is approximately $300, okay? So this is break even in revenue. So now we have 3 formulas on your piece of paper. We have this one, okay, and then we have this will be X as revenues in this particular case. 100% of revenues minus 67% of revenues minus fixed cost of 100. So my 3 formulas, this one, break even in units, fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit, break even in revenues, fixed cost divided by contribution margin percent. Now the next question is, what if I want to what if I want to make $200 instead of break even? So notice up here, I just plugged 0 into this for net income. Well, all I do now is plug in $200, and I can solve it for 60, and you can go through that. Also, know that the formula for a target profit in units, and I should probably not put break even there because it's target profit in units, fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin per unit, and fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin percent will give you your target profit in dollars. Okay, so notice you could also use this same formula for break even, because at break even your target profit is 0. So fixed cost plus a target profit of 0. So right now I have 3, 4, or 5 equations depending on how you did this one. So again, this one, everything stems back to this one right there. Okay, so a shortcut though is fixed cost divided by fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin percent equals break even in units. Fixed cost plus target profit, fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin per unit gives you break even in units, because every unit contributes $5, so I solve for the number of units. Every dollar contributes 33 cents, so I'm figuring out my revenue in dollars, okay? So again, that is not necessarily break even, but target profit. Okay. Next one. What if I have more than one item? And this is where break even in revenues is really important, where I use the percentages. Because what if I have in my entire store $45,000 of sales, I have my cost of goods sold or variable costs of $33,000, so my contribution margin is $12,000. So I can say that 27 cents on every dollar. So 33 divided by 45 is 0.73. 12 divided by 45 is 0.27. Okay? So I have 27 cents. So fixed costs are 100. I can use the shortcut method. Fixed costs of $100,000 divided by contribution margin percent is 370,370, because 27 cents of every dollar are covered fixed costs. Okay? There's another type of problem that's kind of a multi-products, where you have a sales mix. In a sales mix, the sales mix is I sell 7 items of A for every 3 items of B. So some people prefer to not do the sales mix. They like to take it times 7 and 3 and then divide it by, back down when they get done. But anyway, so here's the steps on this one. I'm not going to write them out because I can't type or write very well. But the first one, get your contribution margin per unit right here. So I got 5 and 8. So I sold 2 products. I have A and B. I have 15 and 10 is 5. That's the same one. And then I added 1. 20 and 12 is 8. So that's the first step. The second thing is I want to get my contribution margin percent. Okay? So my contribution margin percent is 5 divided by 15 and 8 divided by 20. So I could probably start right there. Contribution margin percent. And then I multiply it by the sales mix. So 70% of my store is made up of this, and 40% of my store is made up of this. So 70 times 33 is 23. 30 times 4 is 12. So I'm going to add these together to get 35%. So in my store, what this is saying is my average contribution margin of my store is 35%. It's not 33%, it's not 40%. I know it's someplace in between there because I sell some of A and some of B. However, it should be closer to A than B because I sell more of A than B. So that's why I weight these 70-30. So I'm going to have 35%. So I take my fixed costs of $100,000 divided by 35% is 285,714. Okay, then I could do this. That's my revenue. I know my revenue is made up of A of 70%. So I have 70% of A. So my revenue from A is 285,714 times 0.7. So 199,993. And I know that 30% of my revenue is coming from B. And so that is 285,714 is my total revenue from the store, but 30% comes from B. So 85,714 from B. Okay, so all I've just done is split out my total revenue between A and B. And so 199,993 plus 85,714. 285,707. Okay, so I got some rounding differences there. I might have hit a number wrong. But anyway, these two should add up to 285,714, give or take $1 or $2. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to clear that out. You can multiply them out. 285,714 times 70%, 285,714 times 30% to figure out where I'm at. I'm off like $7, so I must have written a number down. Okay, so that's the contribution margin. And then the last one is the hardest one. Throw in a tax effect. Okay, so so the problem says, what if I want to make $200 after taxes? Obviously, I only can do this for target profit because at break even net income is 0 and I pay no taxes, so it's going to be the same. But what if I want to make $200 after taxes and the tax rate is 40%? So if you think about this, I've got a $15 selling price. So I'm going to go right in here. Okay, so I have 15x, it's my selling price, minus variable cost, which is 10x, minus fixed cost is 100. Okay, and that equals, I'm going to set it equal to $200 right now. Okay, however, here's the problem. If I have taxes on that $200, if I pay 40% in taxes, I get to keep 60% of it. So 60% of this side is $200. Okay, so again, I usually set it up like this. I usually ignore taxes and say selling price times the number I sell minus variable cost times the number I sell minus fixed cost, total fixed cost, equals my profit. And I write down $200 and say, hey, I get to keep 60% of it. So now the next step, I can divide both sides by 0.6, so that'll cancel it. This will cancel it out. Okay, so that side divided by 60% cancels that out, so I'm left with just this. And then 200 divided by 0.6. And this is what your book uses. I just want you to see it. So I have net income, this is what your book will say, net income divided by 1 minus the tax rate. Okay, why is it 1 minus the tax rate? Because the 40% tax rate is how much I send to the government. Okay, the 60% is what I get to keep of it. And so this is where it starts, but sometimes I need to see it like this. Okay, so now I can solve 200 divided by 0.6 is 333, and I can solve for x and I get 87 units. Okay, or if I have contribution margin percent, okay, I can do the same thing. Take 200 divided by the tax rate, I get 0.333, and fixed costs plus contribution margin, fixed cost plus target profit. Fixed cost plus target profit is 433. 333 target profit. Fixed cost 100,000. Okay, 433 divided by 0.3. Another way you could do this is I have my revenue minus 67% of my revenue. Okay, because I have, if you recall, I have my selling price of 15, my variable cost of 10 gives me my contribution margin of 5. 5 divided by 15 is 0.33. 10 divided by 15 is 0.67. So of my 100% of revenue, 67 cents of it goes towards covering variable costs. I have fixed costs of 100. And so, again, fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin. Okay, so that's it. I'll walk through a few problems on another video, and hopefully this helps. And again, you really need to practice this.